Hi, everybody. This is Lisa.
And this is Joe.
And welcome to your Cheap Date Show for August 18, 2007. On this week's show...
It's a cake of 1,000 leaves.
That sounds like a video game. Where you have to go around and collect all 1,000 leaves.
I'm only up to level 894. God, Dad, don't make me save. I can't save right now. I'm in the middle of a battle. I actually heard that last night.
From me.
From you. You didn't call me Dad, obviously, but
that'd be weird.
It's like, hey, can we get going now? Well, I'm in the middle of a battle.
I didn't say it like that. I said, hold on just a sec. Let me finish this battle. You can't save mid-battle, Joe. So let's talk about our cheap date.
And let's go on with the explanation of what the land of 1,000 leaves means, or whatever the heck that was.
I don't know. I don't even know what it means. You tell me.
We went on a cheap date this week that is nowhere near cheap. And it still wasn't even cheap even after the reason it was cheap. Shall we explain? Let's.
Please do. I'm confused.
We received as a wedding gift from one of our bestest buddies in the world, our friend John, gave us a certificate for a restaurant here in Chicago called Les Nomades, which is a French restaurant located on East Ontario, just steps away from Magnificent Mile from Michigan Avenue.
And Les Nomades were, I don't want to say the menu is simple. The menu concept is simple.
Yeah.
Prefix.
That's all it is. You have your choice. One of two options.
4-course or 5-course.
You take your pick. We chose...
Should we be detailed about the price situation?
We can, because it's out there for all to see.
That's true. You can go to lesnomades.net or whatever.
Yes.
And look up the prices. Well, 4 courses is $100 per person. Now, is that completely ridiculous? Of course it is. You know we don't spend $100 for a meal anywhere. Per person.
Not including drinks.
Not including drinks.
Yeah.
Which, needless to say, were not. There was no $4 bottle of wine.
That's true.
But, as we said, it was a gift. Or at least...
It was a very generous gift.
In the end, at least most of it was a gift. We went a little bit over our gift certificate.
And Les Nomades, like we said, is located on East Ontario Street, which, if you're familiar with Chicago at all, it's a very schwanky area.
Well, it's right next to a Subway, though.
And across the street from a Chipotle.
But it's right around the corner from Michigan Avenue.
Right, where all the hoity-toity stores
like
are.
Burberry and Kenneth Cole.
Orvis and...
Yeah.
Yeah. And right around the corner from the Apple store and the Garmin store.
We did stop into the Apple store, but we're not going to go into that.
Okay.
So, we had our 4 courses.
Wait, I just wanted to say one thing, though, further about it. If you are driving down Ontario and you can only go westbound at that point, you don't even know it's there because it's in a little townhouse that's squished between things. If you didn't see it, if you didn't see the sign, you'd totally miss it.
And you would never think to stop in.
Right.
I don't think.
There's an Embassy Suites hotel near there. There's a couple of hotels.
You have to get a recommendation.
Exactly. So it's really tight. So you walk up and it's really tiny, and it's actually on a couple different levels. They have a tea room upstairs, and we were in the main dining room. But the main dining room would only fit probably how many people?
30, 50?
Yeah, I think probably 30.
I think they can do They said they can do parties up to 50.
But I think that would be upstairs in the tea room.
Yes.
But
yes, it is a very small dining room, and then they have a bar.
So you do need to make reservations. I was fortunate; I made reservations, but we wound up eating early anyway.
Well, 6.
Yeah.
So it was fine, but I think we were the first couple in there.
Yeah, we were. Service was incredibly attentive. You got new silverware with every single course. Even if you didn't use it, they would take it away.
We're not used to that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, let's start with the beginning.
We
came in, first of all, it was weird. We went in, and they were standing inside the door. Not near the door, but inside the door.
Right.
Like, hello, we've been expecting you.
We gave our name. Oh, of course. Right this way.
Of course, we were the only people in the restaurant, which was very... So it was a little bit, at first it was a little bit like, oh, where is everybody? By the time we left, there were 4 or 5 other parties in there, so it was a little bit more comfortable, but we still had a lot of privacy. That was a good thing about being one of only 2 couples in the dining room for most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we sat down and immediately were offered an aperitif or a cocktail or a glass of champagne.
Mm-hmm.
And we took them up on the glass of champagne.
When I made the reservation, they asked if we were celebrating anything, and I said, this is actually, we're spending a wedding gift. And they said, oh, who did you get the wedding gift from? And I told them, and they, of course, knew who I was talking about.
Oh, they did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The guy who gave us this has, there are a handful of restaurants that he knows really, really well, and they really know him.
Yes, he is really a connoisseur. Did you happen to print off the wine list?
No, I didn't. And actually, I forgot the name of the wine that we had. We didn't know the champagne we had. Well, no, you knew the champagne.
I didn't know because they just asked if we would like a glass, and we said yes. I think their glass champagne, their house champagne was
Actually, according to this, it's Louis Raderer Brut Premier.
Yes, okay. That, of course, was lovely. It was a great way to start off, and we enjoyed that with our first courses, and then had them bring a glass of. We each had a glass of red wine. We'll get more into that later, but
right.
That we ordered to go with our entree. And you know what? I'm never going to do it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
We've ordered bottles and half bottles, and that's great. But that was wonderful having champagne with the first few courses, because the first courses are light. Soups, appetizers, things like that go just fine with champagne. Champagne, of course, is a great thing to sip on while you're deciding what to order and nibbling on bread. And then we each had a glass perfectly paired with our entrees.
We had asked for.
We never both order the same thing.
Right.
The same entree, I mean. So trying to get the same wine. I mean, it's not a disaster, of course, but it was much easier to order separately. And we each had 2 drinks, and that was plenty, and we didn't buy a whole bottle. So should we go course by course?
Let's launch through it.
Let's go course by course. You say what appetizer you got,
okay.
And I'll say okay.
So as we said, it's a 4-course meal. So you have your first course.
Plat premier.
That's right.
Your first course, your second course.
Basically, appetizer, salad, main dish, and dessert.
Right.
Put it simply. Well, before we even order, or actually we ordered, but the very first thing they brought out was a little starter plate.
Oh, right.
And the starter plate had a little pastry with this awesome cheese inside.
A warm herb cheese.
It was a sharp cheese.
A tiny little crack, like maybe 2 tablespoons of a cool gazpacho.
Mm-hmm.
Gazpacho is sometimes icy cold. This wasn't icy cold. It was lukewarm.
I think it was more than 2 tablespoons, though. I want to say it was maybe 3 or 4.
Okay, but anyway, it was tiny.
It was like the size of a cappuccino, is what it was.
An espresso, you mean?
Espresso, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, and a piece of
ham.
Yeah, but what's that ham? Serrano ham?
Mm-hmm.
Wrapped around melon, I guess?
Yeah. And little tiny sliced green olives next to it. Oh.
Just all of it together was wonderful.
We were off to a flying start. So.
Yes, Joe was already like, oh my God, tell the chef. Joe's very enthusiastic and generous with his praise.
When deserved, I am very generous with my praise.
And you're a really nice guy, and the waiter, I think, appreciated it.
Mm-hmm. It's like the time that we went to Nacional. Well, not with Lisa, but I went to Nacional
with
27, another restaurant here in Chicago. And I said, it was the very first time, this is years ago, I actually sent my compliments to the chef, and the chef came out. I was like, oh my God. He wasn't waving a cleaver or anything like that, but I was half expecting him to. All right, let's move on to the business at hand. The appetizer. The appetizer. I got the butter poached Maine lobster, which came with baby tomato, spring garlic, and fava bean sauce. Now, this was really cool. That was extra. I paid an extra. That's right. There was
I didn't realize you
supplemental
got that
charge on that. I even splurged. So that's part of the reason we went over. Anyway, whatever. This thing was served. It had, first thing, you have a lobster claw on top of it. Not with the shell, just the claw meat. And it was very perfectly extracted because it still had the red on it.
Yes.
And it was in the shape of the claw, and it's like, wow. And Lisa's
right
like,
there,
Lisa's
you can
like,
respect that.
Lisa's like, how many claws do you think they had to tear through to get one perfect like that?
Yeah.
And then they had other pieces of lobster that were sort of, they were almost in the shape of like shrimp. Actually, there were little curls of.
It wasn't shrimp. I
no,
thought
it was
you had
lobster.
shrimp.
No, that was lobster.
Oh, it looked a lot like shrimp.
And it was absolutely delicious. And then they had this fava bean sauce, which actually had, and it was just over it. It was wonderful. And oh man, clean that plate right up. Delicious. And you had.
I had langoustine and seared sea scallop. Mm-hmm. With spring ramps, wild mushrooms, English peas, and sauce foyat. Mm-hmm. The sauce was a veal reduction.
Oh, really?
It was he said it had, it had veal and red wine in it. The scallop was maybe seared, but maybe steamed or something. Mm-hmm. Both were served just barely warm. The wild mushrooms on top of the sea scallop. I love the earthiness of wild mushrooms. Absolutely melted in my mouth. I've never had anything quite so delicate.
It was a delicious scallop.
It was amazing.
Was delicious.
With a little bit of spring greens and, the peas and a sauce that just really, I guess, kind of spiced it up because the meat flavors are so delicate. I mean, the seafood flavors are so delicate. Then we proceeded to...
Deuxième.
Thank you. I had duck consomme with organic root vegetables and duck confit ravioli. Mm-hmm. Now, I had never had duck before, and this, of course, was not exactly a duck, but it had a very distinctive flavor that I can only assume was duck.
You said it was very foul-y.
It was almost like a cross between, I'm so limited in my vocabulary about this, but it was almost like a cross between beef and chicken.
Yeah, that's duck.
It did have a bird kind of flavor, like maybe more like turkey, because turkey's a little more gamey, but it was much, much richer. And of course it's a consomme, so I'm sure they seared the duck and they browned the duck and then reduced it down and got a really concentrated duck flavor.
Oh, yeah.
I think it had diced wild although it says organic root vegetables. I'm not sure what the vegetables were in it. But they were very nice and very earthy. It was, it was very earthy. And just one little ravioli with, you know what, I couldn't tell you what was in it. Honestly, it was some sort of, confit.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I don't even know what that is. But the broth was wonderful.
Right. My second course was a salad. They refer to it as organic greens and haricot vert with fine herbs, mosaic of beets and olive oil and Banyuls vinegar, which was actually very good. It was a lovely little fresh little salad. Mm-hmm. One thing we should point out for those of you who haven't done a prefix meal before, what they did, you got this list, and if there's a link in the show notes, you can go to the website, you can look. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They had at least 5 or 6 choices for each course, and you just pick one for each course. So, like Lisa said, we each had something entirely different from each other.
Right. So the
prefix.
I always feel like I'm saying prefix, like.
Some people do say. A lot of your Americans say prefixed.
All right. Well.
Yeah, prefixed.
It just means you get a certain number of courses for a certain price. You are certainly not locked in to what the courses are. Well, some places they'll just have one set menu.
And that's it. Right. That's what, a lot of times that's what happens is you'll just have a menu and it's like, okay, you want to pay for the prefix? There it is. Bang.
But
don't worry about it. It's all done.
We had this somewhere. Before we saw This American Life, we had a prefix menu.
Yeah.
And there were options, like 3 or 4 options. Anyway.
Right. Anyway, let's move on to the main course. If we had chosen...
hurry.
I'm sorry. We got to keep this thing moving here because we have listeners and they're getting hungrier as they're listening to this, okay. And we have other stuff to cover after this too. So
the 5th course that we didn't have was seafood or fish before the meat. They had salmon and halibut.
But you could have the fish or one of the meats.
That's true. You could have fish or meat in the 4-course, or you could have both in the 5-course.
Right.
Now, he told us that in the 5-course, it's a tad bit more expensive, but you don't actually get more food because they scale the portions down. And by the way, all these are delightful little portions, so you don't come away feeling... We were very satisfied, but not overly full.
Exactly.
I think we ate a very reasonable amount of food.
So for the main course...
Let me just go through the choices really quick. Poached Angus beef fillet, crispy sweetbreads, and roasted squab breast. Rack of lamb, roasted veal loin, roasted venison loin.
Mm-hmm.
I had the rack of lamb. It's not on here, but it was crusted in basil and garlic, maybe? Was it garlic?
I think so.
It was basil and something. Served with a goat cheese mousse and a vegetable and rosemary sauce and an artichoke with diced vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
The lamb was, needless to say, amazing. Medium rare. It was actually very bright pink, which is exactly how I like it. It was just seared on the outside and warm through. But the goat cheese mousse was amazing. The lamb is a little gamier than beef, but not as gamey, of course, as the venison. But the goat cheese was really creamy, added a lot of richness and kind of some mellowness to it.
Yeah.
But it was... I'm not sure I've ever had lamb out. I've only had lamb a couple times, and it was amazing.
The wine you had with that, I was just looking at their wine list, and I didn't see it. It was a California Cabernet.
It was a Napa Valley, yeah.
But our waiter recommended it, and he said it was a good match.
He did. I didn't even try to pick out my own wine.
Yeah, they have a very extensive wine list.
I knew that by the glass it would be something reasonable and whatever he thought. He recommended a few, and honestly, I had no idea. I wanted to just tell him to flip a coin, but I decided on a Cabernet. And actually, it was fine because you ended up having one of the other ones he recommended for me.
I did. It was a Rolf Binder Halliwell from Barossa Valley in Australia, which is a Shiraz, and I forgot what the other mix was, but it was a blend, and it was absolutely delicious to go with my roasted venison loin.
Go you.
Now, I've never really had venison before. I might have had it once before at a restaurant similar to this years ago, but I asked our server what he would recommend, what he thought. I said, if I had a choice between the beef fillet or the veal loin, what would he recommend? He said, the veal. I said, if you want beef, you're in Chicago, there are lots of places to get good beef. Ours is good, but, he said the veal is wonderful.
Go to a steakhouse.
Right. So then I said, okay, what about between the veal and the venison? He said, hands down the venison. He said, the venison is fantastic. Go for it. And I said, fine. It's venison loin with parsnip mousse, which is neat. The venison came, it was sliced into little medallions, probably as big as, maybe about as big as a $50, maybe a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah, a little bigger than that.
Excuse me. And then they were laid very gently across each other, and this parsnip mousse was underneath it, which was really, really kind of neat.
When I think of a mousse, I think of something whipped and creamy. Was it?
Yeah, it was whipped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was. It was just kind of smushed down because the stuff was sitting on top of it. It also had smoked bacon in it, and as I said to Lisa, this was not Oscar Mayer. This was really good bacon. Also some Swiss chard, some green peppercorn, and then some juice. There was I would call it an emulsion. I don't know if they wanted to call it that. He just referred to it as like a gravy or a dressing or something like that on the side. A sauce. And that was really good. And just putting all that together, oh, man, it was absolutely wonderful.
It was.
And, so...
And how was the venison?
The venison was good. They also cooked it medium rare. And it was venison, it does have sort of a beefy taste to it, but it doesn't really it's not gamey in the way that duck is gamey compared to chicken. Venison isn't really as gamey compared to beef or ostrich or something like that as you would expect. I've had ostrich before too, at a restaurant not very far from where we were tonight.
I think both the lamb and the venison, I think, can be strong, and they were both prepared so delicately.
Yes. There was no really overpowering, because I noticed that when I tasted your lamb, it didn't have that overall lammy flavor to it that you're used to. you're just craving mint jelly on top of it.
Yeah. And again, especially when you added the goat cheese.
Right.
That toned it down even
That was wonderful. So now we move on to les fromages and les desserts, which, oh my God, I can't even begin to describe the selections that we had. Now, the one thing that we had to do was, if you ordered any of the souffles or some of the things below a certain line on the menu, they wanted you to order that stuff ahead of time so that they can prepare it for you, so it'll be ready in time for your dessert. So you
should always order a dessert that they have to start when you begin eating.
So what did you have?
I had the warm chocolate tart with raspberries, white coffee bean ice cream, vanilla froth, and chocolate sauce.
Oh.
Now,
this was Lisa's dream on a plate.
So it was a tiny chocolate cake filled with chocolate goo and raspberries. And a little dollop of... Now, the white coffee bean ice cream, the way they do this is they cook coffee beans with the cream when they make the ice cream. They use whole coffee beans, but then they strain the coffee out. Mm-hmm. Usually when you make coffee ice cream, you put in a little bit of instant coffee or ground coffee to give it that flecked look. Mm-hmm. But this was pure white, but had an amazing coffee sweetness that was just so perfect with the chocolate, with the warm chocolate. The vanilla froth was nice too, but I didn't. It was just a tiny bit of it. And needless to say, the warm, gooey chocolate was heavenly. Mm-hmm. Of course, we had coffee with dessert because you should always, even if you don't like coffee, you should always order coffee at a restaurant like this because it's the best coffee ever.
It really is. And this is coffee. We were just talking about.
I don't get coffee at Denny's, but
you should.
But when you pay $100 for dinner, you know you're going to get good coffee.
And it was really good.
Real cream. Very
smooth. It was very much like the coffee I've had in Europe.
I mean, not to rave about the coffee because that's not why we were there, but it was a lovely finish.
But it was not Starbucks, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Bitter, as one of my colleagues from Switzerland says. Yeah, one of my colleagues from Switzerland would say it's bitter, burnt and expensive. Mm-hmm. So, I, for my dessert, had the mi fui, which means 1,000 leaves or 1,000 sheets. Oh. Essentially what that is, it's a puff pastry, and what they do is they took white chocolate and yogurt mousse and but they layered it in between the layers of the pastry. So it looks like this slice of something that
kind of looked like waffle cone discs.
Yes. And it was...
But extra flaky, layery.
Right, with the stuff layered in between. And, it was wonderful. There were fresh blackberries with it. And then there was mandarin sorbet on the side, which was kind of...
But I think actually you got mango sorbet.
Was it mango sorbet?
He said mango sorbet.
Oh, that's right. It was mango sorbet.
It says mandarin on the menu.
It says mandarin, but it was definitely mango. And it was sorbet, but they had big slices, big, relatively speaking, because it's all small portions, but... large slices of mangoes in the sorbet. So like I took my spoon, I went like this, and a little piece of mango shot out on the side. Hey, get back here.
Well, maybe they go with whatever fruit they have.
What they did also when they served us dessert, in addition to the coffee, was they served us a little plate with 2 each of little sweets on it. Mm-hmm. There was a piece of fudge, chocolate fudge. Oh. There was a little like almond kind of cookie thing. Mm-hmm. There was a little it was like a greenish. Was it green or was it brownish?
It was brown. That gummy thing.
The gummy thing was a delicious little sugary gummy thing. Yeah, I ate yours too. It was really good. Similar to what you would have, like it was similar to rice candy or it was something like that. It was gooey and it was very sweet. It was very good. And then they had another little puff pastry, was it not? No, it was a little cookie.
It was, yeah.
It was almost like a marguerite or it was a little tiny vanilla wafery kind of thing.
It was like a puff pastry in that it had
a dome,
a shell, a thin shell, but then a soft pastry center.
It was almost like a mini...
But it had cream in it,
too. It was almost like a mini cream puff.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I put that thing in my mouth, and that's it. All bets are off. I'm done. All said, we're not going to go any further into prices and whatnot, but like we said, the prefix meal is $100 for the 4-course. It's $115 for the 5-course.
Right.
As Lisa said, we were told that it's the same amount of food, just smaller portions if you go for the larger,
the 5-course.
The 5-course. Service was absolutely wonderful and attentive.
Oh.
And we should also point out the fact that we were the first people there at 5 o'clock, but within a half hour, or within a half hour, and certainly within the hour, the place was full. Everyone showed up.
And can I just say, given the high price of the food, the wine starts fairly reasonable.
Yes.
Glasses of wine start in the
like
$15 to $20
actually
range.
less than that. They're around $8 or $9 for the.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, that's where they start.
And go up to about $20, which is kind of a lot for a glass. But if you just have a glass, it's not too bad. And bottles start they have half bottles, and bottles start at $40-$50. Honestly, I expected the wine list to be much more unreasonable, and the waiters were not pushy at all about getting a bottle or anything like that. They offered us a drink to get started, and then since we already had a glass of champagne, they sort of assumed that we would each want a glass. I was maybe expecting, a lot of places they're trying to get you to buy bottles because, markup and everything.
That's right. There's bucks to be made.
Honestly, the service could have been very uptight and pretentious, and it wasn't. It was formal, and as you said, it was ridiculously attentive, but it was also very friendly.
And that's snooty.
And I read that in reviews that it's a friendly place, and I wasn't sure if friendly by what standards. I was thinking if they charged $100 per person.
Well, if you remember the restaurant in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the French place they went to there, I think they were thinking like guys like that.
Yeah, well, we're not teenagers in jean jackets either.
Entre nous, take the field trip outside.
Jackets required, by the way.
Yes, jackets required. The one thing about our server is that he did ask, he's like, okay, were you guys done? And, will there be anything else? Are you ready? And I said, let's bring another round on. And he said, what, tequila shooters? It's like, it's my kind of server. So that was good. Anything else to say about that? It was a wonderful place. If you're looking to treat yourself, if you're in Chicago.
If you're in Chicago, if you really want to go all out.
And guys, and stop me if this is wrong. If you want to impress somebody, if you want to impress that special lady in your life, this is the place to go. Would you say that? Or this is a place to go? I'm not sure it's
a good date place. I think it would be too high pressure for a date.
You think?
But I think if you love food and if you want to have just an absolute 4-star food experience, if you want to feel like a judge on Iron Chef or the mean food critic in Ratatouille.
I did feel like I felt like Mo Rocca
with those tiny. Oh, come on!
No, I did feel like an Iron Chef judge
with those little tasting portions. Yeah, if you really want to have an awesome food experience, just once in a while or once in your life, you should just see how the other half lives.
And if you decide to do that, the place to do it would be Les Nomades, 222 East Ontario Street in Chicago, Illinois. Their website is lesnomades.net. Check the show notes for the link, and reservations are highly recommended.
And you're walking distance from the Apple Store. Hey, do I know our listeners?
Okay, we've got a bunch more stuff that we're not going to get to this show. So for those of you who sent in stuff, we got some guest reviews and some things. We promise we'll do those on the next show. But we do need to address a couple of things. Number one being the dip versus main course thing we put out last time.
Is dip a condiment or a food? I guess I was on the condiment side.
You were.
All right. I don't even remember this conversation. But apparently I said dip is a condiment.
Well, you didn't say a condiment. I used the word condiment.
I said rum was a food? I don't even remember
We were talking about the 4 basic food groups. Well, let's just move on and we'll see how our wonderful listeners weighed in on this,
You're
because
paying
we
more
got some
attention
good
to it
feedback.
than I am, I guess.
Way to go, Lise. All right. Shelly from Shelly's podcast. Shiny Shelly from South Austin, as she signed her email. She said she has no comment on the status of dip as food because
she wrote in to not comment.
She's not so much a fan of dip. If she has chips, they'll be dunked in salsa, not dip, but I digress. She says...
How is salsa not dip?
Oh, now don't eat... Okay,
All
is
right.
salsa a dip? Is salsa a condiment?
Okay,
Let us know, folks.
Continue.
She says she's a fan of Air America's Rachel Maddow, partially because of the politics, but also because she sometimes speaks about booze on her show. And it's from her that Shelley has adopted the temporary household motto, bourbon is a mixer. So if rum can be a food, bourbon can be a mixer. Thank you, Shelley. Whoa. Oh, Lisa's going hands-free now. Or she's going.
I need to lean back.
Okay.
I can't lean forward. I feel like I'm slouching.
We heard from Ace from a blog called The Impulsive Buy, which I highly recommend. I crack up when I read this. It's great. He says he's qualified to settle this debate once and for all. Dip is food. He doesn't go to Joe's Crab Shack and pay $13 for lobster dip as a quote-unquote condiment. I'm making air quotes with my fingers. It's the focus of the plate and therefore is considered the cuisine. A condiment is something that's a voluntary addition and not an essential element to the dish. Consider Indian cuisine. If you saw a person dipping their naan or pita into some hummus, would you say that they had naan for dinner? Of course not. You say they had the dip. The carbohydrates are merely the vessel for the real foodstuffs. Thanks, Ace. And then we move on to Laura from Finland, all the way over in Finland.
Guten Tag.
And
whatever they say. They're for stupid Americans. Jeez.
She says she doesn't see why, in the context that we brought it up, onion dip, or any dip, in fact, could not be considered food. But seeing as we'll probably not be satisfied with that answer, she's going to go on. And she says, I myself have never had dip on its own, but would imagine with the right kind of dip flavoring, it could be like having a savory yogurt. I'm not saying that this would be particularly pleasant. Laura, speaking as someone who actually has taken, run out of chips and you take your finger and you stick it in the bowl of onion dip. Yeah, trust me. So I think the dip on its own should be considered one of the 4 components of Lisa and Joe's 4 main food groups. But then she says, don't take my word. This is coming from a girl who thinks French cheese is a meal. I agree that French cheese is a meal.
I'm with you on that.
We're both with you on that one. So thank you for that, Laura. And then we have Nanette from the For Whatever Reason podcast, another great show that we've been listening to. She says dip is a condiment.
All right. Well, I think, how much time do we have to devote to this?
We're going to need to wrap this up very quickly. Nanette also sent us a recipe for a sangria, which we will get to in the next show, we promise. So thank you for that, Nanette.
Thank you, Nanette. I can't even say the word wine now without thinking about Cajun wine. But
that'll make people tune in next time.
Maybe we'll try another sangria recipe in the interim and cover sangria again in more depth.
Sure enough.
Okay. And maybe we'll go to La Tasca.
Say.
Okay, let's talk about dip as a food or condiment. I think lobster dip. Wait, which side am I on? Okay, lobster dip is not the same.
You don't think dip is a food?
Well, I guess I was thinking of nacho dip, like melted cheese with chili peppers, or bean dip. I wasn't thinking of lobster dip, which obviously is not a condiment. I mean, if you get lobster dip with chips or spinach artichoke dip with chips, obviously the chips are not the focus. I would say with naan, what do you put on naan?
Oh, hummus is what he had said.
Okay, hummus or
paneer.
Yeah, okay. That's like if you have stew and you dunk bread in it. Obviously the stew is still the food. Just because you dunk something in it doesn't make it dip.
So if you're cooking up a big batch of marinara on the stove and I take a piece of French bread and shove it in there, is the marinara?
It's a sauce, which is neither a condiment nor a food.
Okay, you know what? We're going to put a moratorium out here. We're going to make the 5 food groups now. And I'm changing them all again.
Okay, what are the 5 food groups according to Lisa?
We'll have a report on that next time. If you want to,
can one be chocolate?
Okay, chocolate is one, and beer is probably another one.
Can one be beer?
Yeah. So
2 food groups, forget it.
If any of you want to lobby for your favorite food to be in the Lisa and Joe Cheap Date 5 best food groups or 5 food groups for the new, it's not a pyramid. What would it be? A pentangle? A pentagram?
Pentangle. Do you just make this stuff up?
No. I think the pentangle is what the Chrysler logo is called, actually.
Pentangle?
Pentastar. That's what that's called.
Pentastar? They made that up. It's called a pentagram.
Okay.
All right.
You know, Guinevere grew pentagrams.
What are you talking about?
Never mind. Some of our listeners will know what that means. But go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, if you'd like to chime in on this, feel free. I cannot believe that of all the things we've discussed, the most controversial thing in the last, year is dip a food. Honestly, I don't even remember discussing this. And all of a sudden, we're getting a flood of emails about dip being a food, not a condiment, except according to Nanette, and I'm with her.
Okay, then maybe you need to go down to Georgia and hang with Nanette and Tim and do whatever it is that you do down there.
Eat real food, like ribs, and drink sangria.
I've been down to Georgia. My brother used to live in Georgia. We had a great time down there. It was awesome. Lived in Atlanta. He lived in Atlanta.
You should go down there sometime.
Let's do that. Bring some kudzu back. I think they want to get rid of it. Anyway, we're going long now, so I think perhaps it's time for us to tell these people how they can get a hold of us.
They can either email or call.
They can stop by the house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Call for directions.
Yeah, okay. I just mowed the lawn. You'll recognize it out front there.
Yeah, it looks very neat. Good job. Okay. Email us at dish@cheapdateshow.com.
Or you can leave us a voicemail at 203-206-3283.
No, 206-203.
Isn't that what I said?
No, you said 203-206.
Okay, 206-203-3283.
That last bit is date. You can also check us out on Twitter.
Oh, we want to give the Twitter names out?
Well, I wasn't
Might as well go right ahead.
Why not? Joe is on... Now, Twitter doesn't have a search, but you can type in twitter.com/JTL for Joe or /4th time.
With the number 4.
4th time to check us out on Twitter and find out what we do between shows.
And if you're not on Twitter...
Believe it or not, we don't eat all the time.
Twitter is, for those of you who don't know, it's sort of like a mini blogging thing. Basically...
Oh, just check it out. Go to twitter.com.
You answer the question, what are you doing right now? And you can follow
you have
friends.
140 characters to do
exactly.
It. If you haven't seen it, you should really check it out. Some people think it's dorky, but
it's strangely addictive.
Kind of fun, actually.
All right, we're going to wrap this thing up and maybe go make some blueberry muffins now. Ooh, we should talk about that on our next show, too.
Okay.
So, again, thanks to everyone for writing in. Thanks for everyone for the responses to the dip thing. Thanks for the stuff that we haven't gotten to yet. We promise we'll do it next time. By all means, let us know if there's anything that we can do for you to make your podcast listening pleasure even more enhanced than it may already be.
Gross. Good night, folks.
Good night.
This podcast is a production of Cheap Date Media at cheapdatemedia.com.